Much is said and speculated about the end of Roman Britain, but nowadays we don't even know if the rescript of Honoris was referring to Britain. That's the one about looking to our own defences. But here in Scarborough and along the Yorkshire coast, we have some tangible evidence of things getting a little bit sticky for the Romano Britons. Let's take a look at that and the Barbarian Conspiracy of 367 AD. Oh, and by the way, we've got a little bit of cannibalism as well. We know that in 360 AD, the northern frontier of Britain was raided by Scots and Picts. We believe that a General Lucippinus dealt with that, but it was temporary. There were problems happening on an increasing basis. Oh, and by the way, there are quite a lot of difficult names for me to pronounce in this week's video. Please be kind in the comments. I'll make my best stab at it, but I am an amateur YouTube antiquarian. In the period 364 to 375 AD, according to the historian Ammonaeus, the Britons were subjected to a series of uninterrupted hardships, with raids by Saxons, Picts, Scots and Attacotti. The Western Roman Empire was ruled by a Valentinian I, and these difficulties seem to have been concentrated more in the northern parts of Britain and the eastern areas. The rich villa owners of southern Britain carried on investing in their houses. Was it ever thus? And things came to a head with the Barbarian Conspiracy of 367 AD. Or should I say the Barbarian Conspiracy of 367 AD, and do that voice yet again. And there's a bit of an irony in us being here today in Scarborough talking about the end of Roman Britain. Behind me stands the Grand Hotel, very much a symbol of the height of the British seaside back in the Victorian days. Nowadays, I'm afraid it's described on online reviews as, well, nothing short of a budget holiday getaway. Ideally, what I now need to do is find a candy floss or perhaps a hot dog. I'll have to remember to put one of those warnings that this video contains strobe light effects. Unbelievable how difficult it is to get proper candy floss. You can get it in plastic bags and plastic buckets, but I want it on a stick, and I can't find anywhere that does that now. If you think I'm going on that for your entertainment, you've got another thing coming. Well, that is very disappointing, I must say. It appears that you can no longer get a candy floss on a stick, certainly in this coastal town. So I'm going to have to rely on the technical bods back at the studio to help me with this. So if you look at this candy floss and imagine that this is the northern part of Britain in 367 AD, the year of the Barbarian Conspiracy, this is what was happening. There were raids coming in from here, the Picts and the Attacotti, raids coming in from this direction, that was the Saxons, and raids coming in from this side from the Scots. So you can perhaps understand Ammonaeus's description of a period of uninterrupted hardships. Oh, and it wasn't just confined to Britain. If we imagine over there, another candy floss, the Saxons and the Franks were also attacking Roman Gaul. It must have been a time of real fear for the Romano Britons. Prisoners and spoils were being carted off by the barbarians. try and avoid falling into the water here. Unlike the Boudiccan revolt from the very early phase of the Roman occupation of Britain, there is little to no evidence of the Barbarian Conspiracy of 367 AD. The likelihood is that the raids were uncoordinated, so whilst there would have been pockets of nastiness going on, they would have been confined in a random way to various disparate areas. Valentinian sent Theodosius over to Britain to deal with this barbarian conspiracy crisis, and the Ariani were very much blamed for not keeping an eye out for these invaders. The Ariani were effectively mercenaries, and Theodosius had them expelled from all of the bases in Britain. So order was restored, albeit temporarily. Here in Scarborough and along the Yorkshire coast, we have evidence that following the Barbarian Conspiracy, or should I say Barbarian Conspiracy, the Romans had to invest in extra defences to protect against this sort of thing happening again. These raids by the Attacotti, the Picts and the Scots. Now we face a little bit of a challenge in going to have a look to it today, but we're going to try our best. So we need to head off up there. That's the castle, by the way. I'm at the gates now to Scarborough Castle, and we need to get in there to be able to have a look at the remains of a Roman signal station, part of the defences that were constructed along the Yorkshire coast in the late 300s. Now the only problem is that nowadays it's a English heritage compound, heavily guarded, and they have very strict rules. They do not want us to film there. They absolutely hate the idea of amateur antiquarians with monetised content benefiting from their locations. Now, I am actually an English Heritage member, so I think that it's a legitimate cause for me to go in there as part of my researches and to bring you with me. But I'm going to have to bring you back in a bit. I've disguised my camera bag on my back as best I can, and if I'm successful in breaching these outer defences, I'll meet up with you inside the castle. No, they don't. I've made it into the compound. These guards are everywhere. So I'm currently stood in the Norman keep of Scarborough Castle, and the signal station is out there on the headland, but I just thought I'd take a breather. It's quite stressful, this. The Roman signal station was established here on the headland at Scarborough Castle, what is now Scarborough Castle, in around 370 AD. And as far as we know, it was the first use of this site since an Iron Age occupation around 500 BC. These guards really are everywhere. You'll gather that I'm also up against it today with the weather. I feel awfully embarrassed because we have a growing international audience now on WC21 UK Productions Limited, and this is supposedly nearly the summer. Well, now seems as good a time as any. I'm going to make a dash for it across to the signal station. The rain's holding off at least. So the signal station here at Scarborough was established around about 370 AD, and it's one of 5 known examples on the Yorkshire coast here. The others are at Huntcliffe, Filey, Goldsborough and Ravenscar. But this one at Scarborough is the only one where you can see anything. It was excavated in the 1920s, and there's a small collection of finds from the excavation in a somewhat dingy room up there near the main part of the castle. I'm not entirely sure how much of what we're looking at here is actually Roman. I did read that the ditches were excavated, so I think these outer ditches date back to the Roman signal station. As you could probably see, around about 1000 AD, a chapel was built onto the foundation of the Roman structure. These signal stations are reckoned to have been quite substantial stone structures. You've got the ditches, an outer wall, and then this quite significant tower on the top. And the idea was that you'd have a beacon on the top that would be lit to alert troops inland that raiders are heading across the sea. I will venture out of my temporary cover for a moment. The rain has eased off a bit. Hopefully the footage gives you some sense of how dramatic this location is. And I think if you look at the size of the structure that we can estimate from this imprint, you can see how serious this threat was being taken. That respite from the rain was fairly short-lived there. I'm back under the brolly. Now, at the Scarborough signal station site, well, there's nothing to see, but they have excavated it. There's a fairly grisly indication of how things came to an end here. They reckon these signal stations were only in use for sort of 20 to 30 years, so up to 400 AD at the latest. And what they found at Scarborough was the skeleton of a man, a short man, slumped across the fireplace of the signal station with his arm behind his back as if he had reached around, having been stabbed in the back. At his feet lay the skeleton of another man, which was crashed over the body of a fairly large dog, probably a guard dog. The end was coming for Roman Britain. It looks like you've got two of the ditches from the signal station. There would have been four. The outer one, effectively the eastward facing one, has long since disappeared over the edge of the cliff. I hope that was okay. In reality, there wasn't that much to see other than a couple of ditches, but we do like ditches, don't we, here? But the weather was horrendous and has been all day. I've probably somehow managed to make Scarborough look completely unappealing. I did promise to talk to you about cannibalism, didn't I? And that wasn't just a clickbaity thing. The Attacotti, not as well-known tribe as the Scots and the Picts and the Franks and the Saxons, are attested to in a number of different sources, and St. Jerome tells us that they had some peculiar beliefs. One of the things they believed in was multiple wives, perhaps not too much wrong with that. Apparently they were also into cannibalism. So think about those poor Romano Britons that were carted off as prisoners. Some of them may have ended up as lunch. It's really satisfying to receive such positive feedback about what Britain looks like on camera. I'm very conscious for the last 2 weeks that we've been filming in less than ideal conditions. But we are going to have an election here soon, so I'm sure once that's out the way, we'll be in a summer heat wave or something like that. So stick with us. It is an interesting period, isn't it? The end of Roman Britain. So many questions. But these signal stations, I think, are really interesting. They're a significant investment and they were relatively short-lived. I do hope I haven't put you off of Scarborough as a holiday destination. It is a lovely place and I'm sure they do get the sun sometimes. That's 2 weeks on the trot now we've been disrupted by the weather. We're supposedly nearly in the summer. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Like and... What is that?